Hey folks, I'm Red Monster SC, and in this video we're going to talk about salvage, both what we have today as well as what to expect in 3.22 and beyond. We got our first taste of salvage gameplay with the introduction of hull scraping back in Alpha 3.18, which released in March of 2023. Using a handheld tool or a ship-based beam, you'd scrape recycled material composite from the hull of a vehicle into a storage container, which you could then sell later on. Now, not much has changed from hull scraping since it was first implemented, but they have added tractor beams so that you can reposition pieces as you're working on them, as well as the ability to remove and sell weapons from salvaged ships, which can earn you a little bit of extra profit. We also saw salvage missions introduced in both 3.19 and the Alpha 3.20. With these missions, you pay a fee between 1,000 and 30,000 credits to get the location of a derelict spaceship of varying sizes. The payouts you'd expect from these missions barely covered the fees, the margins were pretty slim, but the biggest draw was the cargo retrieval for those derelict vehicles. This has been the biggest moneymaker as well as the most broken aspect of salvage gameplay up to this point. The cargo could be from either salvage missions or from running PvE bounties, and people are finding hundreds of SCUs of high value material and potentially illicit cargo that can make them millions of credits per run. We happen to be getting a lot of new features with Alpha 3.22, starting with Structural Salvage. This is taking large chunks of metal salvaged from ships and converting that into a refinable material called construction components. There's a fracturing mode that breaks the ship apart into smaller sections, similar to being a hard death state, and the disintegration mode that collects the construction components from those pieces of the ship. This is the equivalent of the extraction mode in mining, and as far as I can tell, there is no current limit to the maximum amount of SCU in a particular fragment before you're allowed to collect it. These fracturing disintegration modes are tier 0, very basic, and it is literally a push of a button and watching a timer count down. The developers already confirmed that this is an early version just to get something into our hands, and they are waiting on some core technology with the Maelstrom system that will manage how ships are broken apart in the future. I think that's going to be a critical piece in the skill-based gameplay in the future, so we'll see how that ties in with Maelstrom once they're able to get it implemented. At least for now, we've got the basics, everything but that skill-based introduction into their structural salvage. They're also adding an alignment field that will increase or decrease the collection rate based on whether your ship is positioned effectively next to those fragments, and the amount of material and value per SCU for recycled material composites and construction components are going to be going through ongoing balancing changes both throughout the P2U cycle and as they get into the live release. We also saw both of the salvage vehicles getting a material buffer that allowed you to build up some volume of material before it started printing out boxes. The Vulture gets a 12 SCU material buffer, and the Reclaimer gets 140 SCU material buffer. These are subject to change as they balance things out in the future, and that is shared between both recycled material composites and the construction components. This buffer prevents you from having to go and stack cargo every other box, which makes the Vulture feel like it's finally something that you're able to solo. Previously, you had to exit the pilot seat every 2 boxes in order to go and move the one box that was blocking the filler station and then eject the box that was inside the filler station waiting for that position to be opened up. This also makes it a lot easier to solo the Reclaimer, which is maybe a little bit too far. I think there's some ongoing gameplay balance they need to address so that the Reclaimer feels like a ship that you need to multi-crew in order to be efficient with. Smash that like button if you're enjoying this video, and make sure to subscribe to be one of the first to know when the next videos are out. The Reclaimer filler station has also gotten an update, so it's now capable of filling 1, 2, 8, and 16 SCU boxes based on how much you have in the buffer. The cargo grid on the salvage processing deck is 2 units tall, with a 5x5 grid in the rear and a 7x5 grid in the front. The grid in the cargo hold stores a 3x2 on the rear and the front, with a 3x3 in the 2 middle sections on each side, each of those stacking 3 boxes high if you want to take that material down through the elevator. You can move even the large 16 SCU boxes out of the rear hatch of the salvage deck to offload to a support ship if you wanted to have someone going to sell midway through a run. And you can also select your preferred container size at the filler station and set it to auto eject, which will keep feeding boxes out as long as you keep moving boxes away from that ejection area and you keep that clear. This means you can purge the entire 140 SCU buffer pretty quickly, although you may need to switch to 2 and 1 SCU boxes near the end to fill in a few of those odd gaps. The Reclaimer Claw also now deploys as part of the fracturing and disintegration modes, so we have a claw operator seat that is functional, but they've changed from that initial grabby hand type claw that we've seen in the initial concepts to more of a beam emitter on the end of a deployable arm. I'd say this looks most like a bug zapper strapped to the end of a vacuum hose. This is a big change from the early concepts of the Reclaimer and what's been sold on the ship up to this point. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. Do you like it? Do you wish they'd stuck with the original concept? Let's hear your opinions in the comments below. Now, there's a lot more work for salvage gameplay on the horizon before it's considered complete. Specifically, and most importantly, the structural salvage needs to be integrated with the Maelstrom system. This controls how the ships can be broken apart and is going to be critical to the skill-based gameplay that's missing right now from structural salvage, fracturing, and disintegration modes. The Maelstrom systems should allow for a finer control over the size of the ship's sections that are left over after the fracture, allowing players to manage for smaller pieces that will maximize their buffer capacity without necessarily going over and wasting that excess material. We might also see an improved yield on the construction composites when a fracture is properly executed. So, the skill-based gameplay is going to be a critical piece that's missing right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing and providing feedback on that once it's delivered. Next is the refining of salvaged materials. The current language for construction components and recycled material composites does state that they can be refined. We don't see that yet, and I think for the future with blueprints and crafting, these are going to be critical components as part of the refining process. In addition, we still haven't heard any news about resource siphoning. This is the ability to pull hydrogen and quantum fuel, oxygen, various liquids and gases that are critical for the ongoing ship operation from a salvage vehicle. Those are still to be determined. And finally, component recovery. Your shield generators, power plants, quantum drives, relays, and other engineering components that are going to be critical for the ongoing operation of a ship on the hardware side. We know that these components are physically integrated as part of the ship models in the majority of those cases, but we have not yet been able to go through on these derelict missions and pull out those components as part of the salvage. And there you have it, my recap on what you can expect from Salvage in Alpha 3.22. Let me know your thoughts of the current state of hull scraping and structural salvage, and whether you think it's even worth your time given the broken amount of money you can earn recovering cargo. Also, keep an eye out for my upcoming guides for hull scraping and structural salvage that will give you a step-by-step guide through each process. You can connect with me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Discord, and Patreon using the links in the description. Thanks to my patrons for your ongoing support, funding channel giveaways, and other perks for the Red Legion community. And finally, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, because there are plenty of changes on the horizon for salvage gameplay, and I'll be here to help you navigate them all.